prefer not to be recorded, please feel free to turn off your video. So I am Helen Chan, and I am the manager of Open Scholarship and Copyright here at UTS Library on Gadigal land. I'd like to humbly acknowledge and pay my respects to the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, whose knowledge, care of country, lore, and community are unsurpassed. And I want to also pay my respects to any traditional owners from where you may be joining us online today, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are on this call. I welcome you now if you want to use the chat to add in your own acknowledgements. So just a quick overview for today's session. It's very much a show and tell, and we have a great lineup of guests, a special guest actually from CAUL. Barber will be talking a little bit about the CAUL OER Collective, and then we'll be showcasing 3 different open textbooks, drawing from engineering, digital media, and also legal research skills. And at the very end, I'm going to give a very brief, quick sort of run through of Pressbooks, which is an online authoring tool, which has been used actually by all of our authors here as an example of just how easy it is to actually create your own open textbook if you have the right people and resources available to you. Now, looking at our guests, I can see a lot of people who are extremely familiar with open textbooks and don't actually need this definition, but I feel it's just right to kind of put it up front that an open textbook is basically any kind of educational resource that has that licensing like Creative Commons that allows copying, the redistribution, derivative works as well. So you can basically save a copy, you can share it, and you can make changes to it as well to kind of pay that knowledge forward and allow other people to reuse that in fantastic ways. Is content that can be contributing into a course or program of study, or also into co-curricular activities as well. So thank you, CAUL, for that great definition. So to kick off, there's fantastic, sort of activity and a lot of maturity happening in the OER space across Australasia and internationally as well. And so I wanted to bring in Ash today to kind of set the scene in terms of what's happening, in our region here in Australia and New Zealand, some really exciting initiatives and programs that are driving that activity forward. And so to briefly introduce Ash, Ash is the OER Collective Senior Coordinator at the Council of Australasian University Librarians, or CAUL. Throughout her career in university libraries, her work has had a keen focus on the promotion and the integration of open educational practices and the development of inclusive open educational resources. So I will stop sharing my screen so Ash can share her fantastic content with you today. So welcome and thank you, Ash.
Thank you. Just getting to my screen as well. Okay, well, hi everyone. Kia ora koutou for any of our Aotearoa New Zealand attendees as well. So yeah, as Helen said, if you haven't met me before, I'm Ash Barber, the Senior Coordinator for the OER Collective. And that means that I oversee the Australian and Aotearoa New Zealand open educational resource publishing that goes through the Pressbook system that CAUL is subscribed to. Before I continue, I would like to acknowledge I'm zooming in from Tanganya, which is the unceded Kaurna land, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. Tanganya is the Kaurna name for Adelaide, and that translates to Red Kangaroo Place. So you may know of the collective or you may not. Either way, it doesn't matter because I'm going to tell you about it. I'll give you a bit of an overview of how the collective came to be and why, and highlight its mission to enable collaboration across institutions and nations in our region to develop institutional capacity for open educational resource publishing and to build a community of practitioners across all levels of open ed maturity who can mentor, support, and celebrate each other. So the OER Collective, it's an initiative of CAUL. It was launched in 2021, but it really kicked off as a pilot project around 2022 as part of CAUL's Enabling a Modern Curriculum strategy. And this was responding to a growing need for a coordinated approach to OER publishing infrastructure and institutional capacity building. At this point in time, our region only had a few universities who were actively dabbling in OER publishing and adoption, and fewer still who had dedicated staffing and resourcing for the work, but the interest was widespread. So the collective was formed to build this infrastructure and publishing workflows, developing staff capacity, especially for institutions who were unable to do this alone or who really needed that sense of safety that comes with having a peak professional body backing the work, because it was a pretty new concept back then. It was also formed to empower institutions to publish their own OER in disciplines of their choosing. So CAUL isn't saying, publish this. The institutions can look at what do their students need, what do their cohorts need, and they can choose what they're publishing as a result of that. The collective facilitates collaborative, cross-institutional, cross-country authoring and publishing of OER in targeted priority disciplines, and you'll see some examples of that today. And these also include a focus on lifting marginalised voices and the voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and Māori communities. And crucially, the collective aims to achieve tangible outcomes that move the OER agenda forward at a national level for both Australia and Aotearoa New Zealand. So the collective had such a successful first 2 years that in 2024 it moved from being a project to an actual service of CAUL. And the collective grew, continuing to provide a shared OER platform, which is Pressbooks, around $100,000 in grants so far, and more again this year, and building community and capacity across participating institutions to support that knowledge sharing and open education engagement more broadly. The OER Collective Publishing Workflow Guide, which is linked in the screen there, and hopefully somewhere in the chat now, that's a key resource that guides the publishing activities in the collective. I really, really encourage you to go check it out, even if just to have a little poke around and learn a bit more about how publishing works in OER. So you can see all of our past and present grants at the link in the QR code on the screen there. These grants are designed to support open education projects across the community, providing funding for both OER creation and adoption efforts. Adoption is new this year. The focus of the grants and programming for the collective has evolved throughout the years, starting with multiple smaller grants that encompassed broad subject categories, but focused on high impact texts that were locally relevant, raised marginalized voices, and addressed the needs of emerging disciplines. So we're really trying to get as many runs on the board as we could right at the start to set the stage for the collective as an empowering community that gets results. Since then, the grant program has experimented with different funding levels and category focuses, such as separate tracks for texts serving small and large cohorts, Kickstarter grants for institutions who were yet to publish their first book, and targeted commissions for health sciences and Indigenous knowledge texts. So continuing to respond to community feedback this year, the grant program introduces several new categories. We've got a large collaboration-focused grant, 2 grants focusing on the creation of ancillary resources, so those extra things like quiz banks, slide decks, all that sort of thing that goes with a textbook, to encourage the adoption of existing OER, considering we now have so many. And we also have a wildcard grant where the community can just bring their project ideas to us and tell us what you need. So applications for most of these grants, they're all open right now, and most of them will close on Friday, the 2nd of May. The large collaboration grant closes Friday, 30th of May. So you can check out all the details through the grants tab on the OER Collective site. Go to that link, go to that QR code, bookmark it, and I hope to see your application soon. Our institutions are at various stages of development with regard to their exploration of OER. And the aims of the collective really are designed to enable our institutions with different goals, different needs to benefit from the collective and from each other. So today we have 40 institutions participating in the collective. We have all 8 core member institutions from Aotearoa New Zealand and 32 from Australia. So this huge number of institutions is reflected in the huge number of books published through the collective over the last few years, and in the collaborative trend of many of the projects. So last year alone, we published 28 books. Some were brand new, others were adaptations or new editions, some were the final chapters after initial partial release. And currently our catalogue is up to 60 books. And if any of you are on the OER Collective mailing list, you would have seen the last few weeks, several more have come out, and there are plenty more forthcoming as well. And all this brilliant work across our region started to be noticed internationally. So the collective community, it's collaborative by nature, and so much so we won an award last year, the OE Global Award for Excellence in the Open Collaboration category. This award underscores the OER Collective's exceptional commitment to fostering collaborative open practices within the academic community of Australia and Aotearoa New Zealand. The collective was also featured in a Pressbooks webinar that celebrated collaboration, and several authors and librarians within the collective have received individual awards for the impact of their publications as well. So our collective continues to grow from strength to strength. So if you want to be part of this wonderful, collaborative, award-winning community, check out the OER Collective website. So you can see the QR code and link on the screen. Check that out for all of the latest resources, as well as information about grants, the publishing workflow guide, and any upcoming events. One that I will point out, also popped it on the screen for you, is our upcoming training session, which is co-hosted with the ASCALite Australasian Open Educational Practice Special Interest Group, the OEPSync. You might have heard of it. That's on the 11th of April. That's this Friday. So that's Hayley Babb, the manager of Spark's Open Education Program, who's delivering that for us. So she's zooming in all the way from North America. Her OER advocacy workshop is well renowned, and she's tailoring it for our region. So it's going to be very practical, and it'll be about advocating to the decision makers in your institution. So talking to the people who can actually make an open ed program happen at your institution. So that's the collective in a nutshell. I hope it sparked your interest and shown you some of the amazing stuff going on that you could be involved in. Please reach out to me at oercollective@caul.edu.au if you have any questions or are interested in joining the collective. You can also get in touch with me at Ash the Librarian on Blue Sky, Mastodon, LinkedIn, all the things. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Ash. And just a personal shout out to Ash. We have published a few things at UTS or UTS ePress, and many a late email to Ash going, "This is not working. How do I fix these?" And her very gentle, calm manner saying, "Just do these things. And what about accessibility? And have you considered a book cover?" Like, very good things to consider. So the support that CAUL have provided on that very pragmatic, the strategic, the operational side has really meant all the difference in terms of actually getting projects from that beautiful idea stage to the publication stage. So thank you so much for your contributions, to open textbook publishing.
You're most welcome, and likewise.
And this seems like a great segue talking about the grants. Our first showcase is actually a book which received a grant, and that is Engineering with Country. I'm very privileged to be able to introduce very quickly. We have Cat Cutay, who is presenting today. Cat has descended from seafarers of Aboriginal and Celtic origin. She works with Aboriginal communities for online language learning, story sharing, and data analysis as a way for Aboriginal culture and knowledge to be acknowledged and integrated into Australian engineering practices. We also have one of her co-authors who's kindly joined us, looking like she's at the beach, but apparently it's just the background, sadly. Elizabeth Lee has been an educator for more than 40 years, and she revels in working with active and engaging environments to stimulate learning. And along the way, she has worked with learners in places as diverse as Australia, Russia, and Southern Africa as well. I don't know if Timothy's on the call. Is Tim here too?
No,
well,
he couldn't make it. Yeah.
Great. In that case, I'll stop sharing and actually let you, Kat, take the stage and tell us about this fantastic book.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge I'm coming from Garamilla, the land of the Larrakia in Darwin. And if I could find my slides, it's just gone right in front. And I'd like to acknowledge the elders past and present and the care of the land that was provided that gives us this beautiful country that we're now living on. And I've managed to go halfway through. I'm very organized. Yeah, so we got the grant to do a book, Engineering with Country. Well, we started off Engineering on Country. Everything became very flexible. Thank you to eBooks for being flexible. It was Engineering on Country, but of course, Engineers Without Borders has the program that name, so we renamed it. We had many authors across Australia, and we had some from Aotearoa, but they haven't yet been able to write articles, but we hope now it's out, they'll see what the resource is like, and they'll also be able to contribute. And Tara Burton is also here. She was our librarian who suffered our way of working, and like Ash, continually supplied us with checks to make sure that what we produced was a copyright book and more approved and things. So I appreciate Ash and Tara for all the work you did on this book. First, I'd like to explain why we talk about engineering knowledges from a First Nations perspective. It's a very old tradition, and Australia has highly sustainable approach to engineering from its first people. And we want to introduce this into the curriculum, and this knowledge and this experience and the case studies and everything that we have, and the technology. So we want to encourage lecturers to work with local communities and cultures that provide this perspective and challenge the students in these many skills, such as ethics, governance, communication, sustainability, things that actually work right across many disciplines. And so by extracting significant features of First Nations approaches, we can provide engaging and challenging simulations, scenarios, reflections, and case studies in this textbook. So it's a very assessment-focused textbook. So this book's about providing material on perspectives that are important for engineers working in Australia and maybe the world, if we can indoctrinate everyone in the right approach. So we want to look at what is considered important, and we realise that this will change over time. As I've talked to different community people, they said, oh, we want engineers to know this, or we want students to know that. And that grows and evolves, particularly as our students' understanding grows. We think, oh, now they can learn this, now they can work on that, and expand the content of the book. And of course, a CAUL ebook allows us to do that, allows us to continually update and expand what we do. But also we particularly want to share this online, because although knowledge is very place-based, some of the concepts that we're talking about, the general perspectives, can be shared, and then people can look locally to reinforce those with case studies. So we're providing examples of perspectives in practice from colleagues around Australia and soon the Pacific. Vanuatu also was interested. And these will grow and change because it's an ebook. So that's a great forum for such a knowledge system to be exposed and shared. We're linking key material that explains concepts. We can link from anywhere on the web, and we will be able to assess if this reasonable material is worth sharing. And so we provide a one-stop shop that shares this material that's worth people using in their classrooms. And we can incorporate with permission, so we can get the permission and put it there, and then people know that that's available for use. And for some reason, my slide's not changing. So how we're sharing this is we want the sharing to be, we want to incorporate the process that we use in culture. So we want it to be sustainable, because Indigenous engineering is a product of a highly skilled, low consumption and low change society with sustainability at its heart. This is really the basis of a lot of our work in community. So we're providing an ongoing framework to share resources. This can be reused by other people putting their case studies and their information, and is accessible online to all users. Also, we want it to be relevant. Indigenous ways of being and valuing are based on the principle that everything is animate. And this is a principle that is often hard for people to comprehend or to accept. So we can explain the many implications of different perspectives through many different case studies and examples. And the examples are place-based, but can be repeated in other places if people get to know the environment in their area. So it's just getting people to look at their own place through the experience of the stories we put up. Also, we want to look at a range of perspectives for people to engage with. When First Nations plan a project, we gather a wide range of perspectives to include in all the decisions. So we want to value the experiences of many people across Australia and New Zealand and Vanuatu, and others can send contributions so that the book will be continually evolving. Now, one thing that we understand is that we want to see the knowledge in practice, and embedded knowledge is something that we can see in processes students use, the products they make, the culture they enact, routines that they do, artifacts they use in their work, and the structures of their work, their groups, their thing. So this embedded knowledge is as visible as a practical application or embodiment of explicit and tacit knowledge within an organisational system, and we're doing that through the work. So we want to emulate this through having this explicit examples up on the web. So we're focusing on practical assessment for teachers, so they can use it in their class to assess concepts we want students to learn. It's very practice-based. And again, this book helps that, because we can take knowledge from different places and put it there for teachers, lecturers to look at, and then apply many of the ideas that come from other places. And much of this is shared online already. So the song, art, dance tells of times when mountains, trees, or birds were created through being often manifest in human form. And these can be captured through videos to immerse students in those areas of the country. So having a video textbook is much better than just a static textbook. And First Nations storytellers can be recorded and put in the book to provide guest speakers. So we can, because universities aren't paying for that anymore, or often. We've got images of crucial concepts, such as how many languages there are in Australia, can be shared to, there's a map behind me, sort of give some idea that often people don't realise how many there are. We can challenge perspectives through simulations in H5P, got some simulations online. And we can continually update the projects and themes to inspire new ideas. And this provides help for teachers, a one-stop shop linking to other authentic sources. So particularly that authentic aspect that's been promoted a lot now of what you share is valid knowledge and comes from the right source is important. So we can do that. You know, it's an authoritative, the CAUL provides an authoritative platform to talk from, authoritative. So when in class, we want students to learn these perspectives we're providing through his examples and experiments and projects. And Tim's simulation, that why he was partly he's coming because he's from UTS, but also his simulation was a really, really well thought out simulation of how to focus all the concepts you want to learn in a project with communities down into this particularly important aspects such as communication. So his simulation looks at communication. And these resources, the worksheets, the reflective questions, everything are stored on open data repository that's then linked to the ebook. So it can, you know, share anything through the ebook. It's just a really useful platform. And of course, we understand that simulations like this being applied in different locations, you mightn't have a number of students who could act as the Indigenous community. And this will affect how significant the learning is. But still, you'll get some valid lessons by what happens in that simulation. And we've got a lot of chapters that cover some of the processes and values more explicitly to prepare the teachers how to deal with these sort of simulations. So what we recommend from our experience, and thank you so much for the grant because that paid for reviewers and for images that we had to pay for, that we need to be thorough in following up material and permissions. As Tara knows, I was very slapdash about this and had to get pulled into line and eventually learnt the way to do it. You need to work closely with your librarian. They understand this process, and Tara is our librarian. And we need to understand that your audience is very diverse and may have no background in the material. So how you present it has to be very clear. But also you, the editors, are making your own blog. So that's what it is, a blog with a very good publication network, very good promotion. So thank you very much. That's all.
Kat, I don't know if I can put you on the spot. I don't know whether you could actually like share the actual book maybe, or like a favorite chapter or a section just to, it's nice to kind of get all the background, which is fantastic, but sometimes like it's just lovely to see because I love the cover in particular. So of the book itself, I don't know if you have that on hand, and if not, I could try to bring it up if you want me to share my screen.
Oops, sorry, that's Creole data. If you do this is the other thing I was about promotion. You just do a search and you get the, oops, sorry, that's the local site. I should have done the other one. No.
Yeah, if you like to check the chat, you'll be able to just click on it.
Look, it's
It's
sorry,
the second one. Yeah.
Yeah, the second one. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my university took over. So then you read book. Oops, sorry, I could actually make it a bit bigger too. And yeah, so we've got the map of the different speakers, the Gumbe map of all the different speakers speaking their language around Australia as an acknowledgement. So you can play around with a lot of different concepts. And then we have different sections. So there's material related to humanitarian engineering, projects in community, because that's a lot of our perspectives are placed in the humanitarian engineering stream or systems engineering. Then we have discipline-specific material where, okay, you've got a discipline that's that you want to incorporate some material into. So we've got stories about something like the David Payne worked with the Australian Maritime Museum for a long time, and does brilliant sketches of sea vessels. And sorry, it was another one. He has a map of Australia of all the different types of sea vessels around it. So we could share these images that are normally on the Maritime Museum site, but now can be shared much more broadly. And that's dealing with materials. So it's very topical, but another different perspective. Navigation was, again, an extract from a book by, I can't remember now, sorry, Alan Briggs, yeah, Victor Briggs, sorry. And that was, again, very useful to explain the cleverness of the navigation systems that were used by community people. And the last section were professional skills that we often told in engineering that we've got to learn much more soft skills, as they're called, and they're the professional skills. And these are useful material across most disciplines. And the final one is examples of engineering projects, where we want to encourage staff to take their students out and do projects. And that's where my Aotearoa friend hopefully will contribute. But just at the moment, we've got a software engineering one, because that's my area. So just a reaction in software engineering. So that's the sort of approach we're taking.
Thank you so much, Kat. I know it's a multi-year project. There's a lot of content, and I just asked you to condense it in about 10 minutes. So thank you so much for that background and context. And I think we've already got someone who's keen to ask questions, and I have questions too, but I think I might give the floor. Is it Perry? Sorry, Mark. Mark, did you want to ask directly via video? Go for it.
Thank you. I had a quick look through the PDF. It's really quite impressive. It's clear that there's a lot of work that's been done. I'm just wondering about maybe it's the scope of, is this part of a much larger research project, or lots of separate research papers that are brought together? And then I guess, how far does the kind of community that created this, what we see, extend, like in terms of stakeholder groups? And I guess I'm not sure I think there's a question in there somewhere. I'm just wondering just that general sense of where does this sit maybe within everything else?
It's mainly the embedding knowledge into the curriculum area, where I've been doing it at a different university. So I've had partners from different communities at each university working on different aspects. And some of those are authors, some I've just, because I wrote another book originally, just a book, and I want something more practical, like how to do it. Because in embedding, people get very nervous, we don't want to do the wrong thing, or we don't know what to say. And so it's like, well, you're just showcasing the work. So here's the sort of example of the work, and the students can emulate that and, do as much practical reflection around that. So the work is embedding, and it's possibly research, but I haven't really positioned it as that. But I've had Elizabeth on to help me a lot with the educational aspect of it. Like, I know what I want to teach, but how to teach it and how to get people to live it, to really come back and reflect and embed it in it. So understand it. So that's where the simulations was really helpful from Elizabeth. And then, Tim was one of the colleagues I worked with, and he came up with that simulation himself. And other people, like I've worked down at ANU, so Kate Harridan spoke there about Aquanullius and her work with water. So it's more bringing in any colleagues that had already started that work. Here's a project with a community, or a project about community knowledge that we want to share with others, and make people a little more informed about what the knowledge is out there. There's surveying at Budgebin was a well basically surveyed system of water flow. All these sort of things that aren't common knowledge. Is that answer?
Thank you. Yes, thanks.
Great. I should have said as well that after each showcase, I've factored in about 5 minutes for questions, but if we need more time, I think I'll have a little bit of buffer at the end of the session as well. So if anybody else would like to jump in for questions, we got a couple of minutes now. Feel free to raise your hand, or go, Susan.
Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry, Kat. It's been a long time since we've spoken. This is a really great book, really awesome project. But I really want to ask a question. I'd love to have a yarn with you separately, yeah, but I just have to ask the question around ISIP, and I know you did say that a lot of this information is already out there, but I'm just wondering, you know, the actual shift in communities now, rather than, yes, get our knowledge out there and everyone should know this because it's really beneficial to everybody, but the shift that has taken place from remote communities to we should be holding on to our knowledge and sharing it in our way. And so what's been done out there has never actually been recognised for mob to be named in these resources, to be given academic accreditation, and so, you know, different ways of embedding perspectives and value systems and knowledges are evolving now. And so, like,
Yeah.
my take is, I think you might already know, is that I think we should be embedding Indigenous perspectives and value systems, and we should be contracting Indigenous knowledge holders to work with the course coordinators to bring in the actual knowledge. And that way we're paying people appropriate fees and recommend, you know. So my question is, how does this book contribute to that evolving and changing space? But I'm asking that respectfully.
No, good point. And glad to rave about it. Partly the previous the textbook was written with a lot of other authors writing their stories, their work. A lot of this is my work, my stories, but I acknowledge it came from working with them. If it's with the person who they're knowledgeable, then I include them in the work. But when it comes to the lecturer who will receive this textbook or use this textbook, the important thing that we keep emphasising in the reflection comments, we say, how will this apply in your country? Go and find a local group and ask them about how would they show you how they make boomerang or spear, if that's the sort of, if you were doing mechanics, or go and talk to them about what they know about their water and bring them into the classroom. So it gives them a leverage to engage with community. Like, what do I talk to this fellow about? Oh, you can go and ask them about the water knowledge, and here's a bit of background for you. You can go, and these are sort of exercises you could do, but that will help give the confidence to then start going out. And as you say, I made that snide comment about we don't pay guest lecturers much now, which is really frustrating. But at least we've got some people who already got expertise in that area. You can talk to them, or preferably go to your local person. So it's, yeah, I agree. ISIP is great work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That's an incredibly important and big conversation. I know at UTS we're developing our own ISIP guidelines. There's also an Indigenous graduate attribute where this kind of content could be used to support student learning. And then I think a stance also around Indigenous data sovereignty. So as it's a complex issue, it needs to have that recognition, the benefit sharing. I think it's great that, you know, Kat was saying that, you know, also they paid fees to use the images as well. So I'm assuming there's been conversations around who owns this content, at least from a copyright perspective. I know ISIP goes beyond that a bit as well. But I think you're right. It's a really important thing we have to keep in mind when we start publishing these works that include traditional knowledges too. So thank you. Thank you so much for raising that important point. And thank you, Kat, again, for presenting on this. All right, if any other questions, we might try to address them at the end, because I want to move on to our next fabulous presentation too. So I'll just quickly share a lovely slide. So our second showcase is Color Theory, published through RMIT, and our fantastic author today is Lisa Chanchi. Lisa is a digital media developer, archivist, and multidisciplinary artist from Narm, Melbourne, Australia. She previously taught across a range of courses for 19 years at Victoria University in digital media, visual art, research methods, and also sustainable creative practice. I have to say, this book is absolutely beautiful. Every time I look at it, there's something new or interesting, and I just want to kind of deep dive into it. So I'm really pleased to have Lisa here to give us behind the scenes and kind of walk us through the book and how it came into being. So thank you, Lisa.
Thanks so much, Helen. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, I've dropped the link in the chat, but also if you look up here, there's a QR code. If you want to scan it with your phone, you can have a look at the book as well. Now, hopefully I'm sharing. Okay. Cool. All right, so I'm going to take you on a bit of a walkthrough of the Colour Theory Pressbook. I'll talk about how it was made as I show you some pages and features. I'm kind of calling it 10 topics in 10 minutes, so I'll see if I can do that. So firstly, why did we make a book on colour theory? What was the need? I lead the library digital learning team, and we make resources for the whole institution. We also manage resources. In this case, we do tend to have a lot of resources on academic integrity, study skills, writing, maths, things like that. However, colour theory has broad appeal to art and design cohorts and many other fields besides that. We identified a gap in resources for this topic, so it became part of a project to improve learning resources for creative practitioners. A lot of people work with colour, but don't necessarily understand what it is or how it works. So the proposed content, when I started putting together a storyboard for this, it was too big for our Learning Lab Foundation Study Skills website. So I'm just going to quickly flick to here. We do have this open source education resource, which is all kinds of foundation skills, but colour theory looked like it was getting too big. So I took it to the Pressbooks platform, which had recently been established at RMIT in 2022. I think that was at some point. And that's when the project started. So the book itself has 3 distinct chapters: history of colour theories, the science of how we see the visible spectrum, what we think of as colour, and its application then in art and design and beyond. It's designed to be a foundation resource, which allows users to gain introductory knowledge on a broad range of topics. You'll see there's a lot of topics in there, to understand what colour is, how we see it, how we can use it. So what's good about the Pressbooks platform? Pressbooks is a flavour of WordPress, which gives it some advantages as a user-friendly platform to work with if you can't write code. You can see here the visual editing interface from that page that we were just looking at previously. There are very visual ways to create content, to embed content. If you know how to code, you can also come in here and have a look at the HTML and code directly in here. So it gives you a range of options for editing. The structure of the platform and what it allows us to do are also strengths. So if we look here sort of at the back end, it has a book-like format. Sorry for scrolling. I know that's a problem for some people. I just want to jump to the top. You can see we have front matter, we have back matter, and then we have the structure of all the parts and the chapters, and so on and so forth. And you can create pages, you can have them in draft and hide them while you're creating them, and then publish them bit by bit. So you can sort of iteratively publish a resource as well. You can build a glossary on the fly, which is a really great feature. As you're creating pages, you can be adding terms in, and then that will then populate a glossary page. It will just make it for you, and you can include that at the back of your book or wherever you want to put it, which is a really useful feature. Also, you can create footnotes on the fly. I think if I scroll down to the bottom of this page, you'll see the footnotes feature. Again, you can build that while you're in the page, and it will make the footnotes for you automatically. And it'll have these links, so you can, as you can see here, here's a footnote that I've created on the fly, and I can jump to the footnote at the bottom and jump straight back up to the contents, so it doesn't disrupt the reading flow. You can embed images, video, all kinds of media content. You can export the book in a range of formats. And these are all really great features of Pressbooks. We did have a little issue with Pressbooks in that we would really have liked to have 3 a hierarchy of 3 rather than 2 to structure our book. It does really just have what it calls parts and chapters. So we've sort of worked our way around that with our custom numbering system. So you can structure, there is a bit of leeway in how you structure the book. Making a quality publication has been sort of important. I mean, our team, everything we do, we have a review process. We have peer review for publications like this. We also do attribution checking, rights management, and things like that. I also manage version control, check regularly for broken links. In fact, I just found one on Monday for an embedded video that I'd included, which had been removed from public view. And I was able to replace that quickly and update the attribution. So there is a commitment to continued work to keep the resource current and relevant. I do have a few more updates coming this year as well. So there will be a 3rd edition released. Accessibility is really important to us. And as a flavour of WordPress, Pressbooks is generally quite good for accessibility, for keyboard input and screen reader. There are a few little issues that we're having with theme and style that we'd like to work on, especially relating to this table of contents. And if you can see right at the bottom, I mean, the table of contents kind of covers it, but the previous and next buttons are a little hard to see, can be missed by sight impaired users. So we're thinking of ways that we can sort of improve that functionality. But some of the limitations with Pressbooks might actually be due to our RMIT implementation of it. As you can see, our book looks quite different to the one from the previous presentation. We have different color, perhaps slightly different functionality. It can just depend, really. So we are working around, trying to find ways to work around that. There's also some limitations in where am I? Some limitations with we can edit custom styles. So this is sort of a back-end thing as well. The theme has custom styles. We can override those with our own styles if we want to. There are also some limitations to using H5P content. I don't know how familiar people are with using H5P interactive objects. Pressbooks obviously has the plugin, which any WordPress site can have. We use it for quizzes and a few other things, but many H5P objects are not accessible, or they're only partly accessible. So we do have to think about that, and we try to balance engagement with universal design for learning. We don't want to completely remove visual and interactive content from our resources. And in fact, some site impaired user testers we've worked with were very keen on colourful visual elements that can help to navigate and anchor the content. So our book is mostly accessible, but there are a couple of interactive objects that are not fully accessible at this point. You can also embed other types of interactive objects in Pressbooks if you know how to make them, but they may have different levels of accessibility. For example, these little objects I made in a product called Tumult Hype, and they demonstrate how additive and subtractive color work, for example. But drag and drop is one of the most problematic interactions, so it's not particularly accessible. However, on a page like this one, where I've been able to implement an interactive color wheel, which explains different color relationships and has this sort of draggable object and slider scales and things like that. We do know it's partly keyboard accessible, but not fully accessible, but then we provide the same information in a different way, still has color and, a layout, and but it gives the information in more than one way for different users. I think I'm getting close to time, but a couple of other things are working with open content. How open is open? And I know people might have different levels of openness in their books. But, we've had to be very careful with using things like Adobe stock imagery or AI generated content, which might not have, the licenses might be limited to our institution and not open for other people to reuse. This book is fully CC licensed except for the RMIT logos and the front cover. So anyone can take this book, reuse it, remix it, take parts of it, take all of it, as long as they attribute it. And I guess the last thing I want to talk about very, very quickly is tracking usage with data and analytics. And Pressbooks natively has COCO Analytics, which allows you to track use over time. And as you can see from the data we've gathered, we can see that this Pressbook has been really popular. And it's just about, as you can see here, it's just about to reach 200,000 views and has already had over 120,000 visitors. It is the most popular book in our RMIT Open Press. COCO Analytics is a bit limited, but we can get all kinds of information on users. But luckily in my team, I also have someone, his name's CAUL. He's amazing. He's our senior specialist, and he's also built a whole lot of dashboards for data for all our products. And so we can manage user access over time as well. So that's a really useful thing for us to track usage and see who's using it, see what's popular, what are the most popular pages, all that kind of thing. And very finally, outreach. I've done a lot of promoting of this book in different channels. And in fact, some of our schools are also promoting it with their students. So we promote in LinkedIn. I'm doing collaborations with people in different countries, collaborating with a sign painting magazine in the UK, did a digital poster presentation at an International Colour Society event in Thailand. And presentations like this are really great too. So thank you for including me. And I do like to keep the engagement bubbling along. Like I post things to our L&T community. I prompt people to take them to the quizzes, you know, how do I see colour? What's the difference between additive and subtractive colour? Those sorts of things. And that can bring people in and then, you know, they can share that with their students. I think that's it. I think I kept 10 topics to 10 minutes. Thank you. And
Amazing.
Questions.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And again, like I said, this is just one of the prettiest OERs I've ever had the privilege of actually reading. So thank you again for creating that and actually doing part of my job today, showing the Pressbooks backend in terms of how you created that too. So thank you for that. We've got a couple of questions in our chat. So I might just actually see if anybody would like to ask it directly, or I can read the question out. I think Susan, maybe you had a question, Susan? Do you want to ask it directly, or I can ask it for you?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to know about the analytics of the use and how much depth and breadth are you getting? Like, it's one thing to say we've got so many viewers of the book, but the pages that they go to, the sort of information that they're, the tools they're using, the sort of information that they're getting, so that then your next review of the book or next edition of the book is, you know, you're able to be guided by what people are actually looking for.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a really good question. And we found that the COCO analytics was quite limited. We couldn't get enough information on demographic, or we get basic information about referrers, but not in as much detail, which is why we're now starting to track with Google Analytics, because we can get more of that. The other thing though, it's because it's open, it's hard to know if it's students who are using it or not, but we can track that through. If it's being used in our Canvas LMS, we can track the Canvas data and see the links in Canvas to this book. And so it's a secondary amount of tracking, but like we can't just do it from the book because it's open. And, you know, people do ask us questions about our resources all the time. They say, well, how do we know how many business and law students are using this resource? And it's like, well, we can't tell you because it's open, because they don't log in. So we can't gather specifically that information, but we try and get it through a variety of means and then build a picture. So it's kind of complex, and we're still building our dashboards and reporting to figure that out. So yeah, it's a really good question. And I mean, I wonder if in future COCO analytics, there'd be more data we could get from that. That would
Absolutely, it's an information system, so they need to do better. I would, really, that's where as academics, that's where our kudos comes from, is the sort of information that we need that is needed out there, and that we're actually achieving it and people are using it. So in the way that in the way that they want to, but so that we're addressing people's needs as well.
right. That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
Susan.
for correcting it. Good
I
one.
see that Ash has jumped in as well with the comment about another tool that's being used for analytics. I don't know, Ash, whether you wanted to speak to that briefly.
Yeah, it's an extension of the Google Analytics discussion. There's Looker Studio, which is a way to create a data dashboard using Google Analytics. And the link I've put in there, you can see we've drilled down to that chapter level that you were talking about. So there are ways to do this. It just is a little bit more fiddly, I think.
That's right. And we're using Looker Studio for our dashboards. That's what we're using. And we're starting to build those things in, and we can drill down to pages or chapters, as they call them in Pressbooks, and see which ones are being used. But then I guess to match that against our student cohorts is a bit trickier, because if we can see that they're coming from the LMS or they're coming from certain other places in the RMIT ecosystem, that's great. But if they're just Googling and then going to it, we don't always know. So we're trying to use multiple methods to get that picture.
And one way to potentially be able to track if students are going there from a certain course is to add the book or chapters to your reading list. So if you're using eReserve or Legenta or whatever is tied in with your learning management system, that then gives you a way to track that traffic. It's never going to be perfect though when it's an open resource.
Yeah, they're all great ideas. Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's a trade-off, isn't it?
Yeah, we
you want to remove the barriers when you also know but where's it being used? Where's the impact being made?
Yeah, that's right.
Now I might just sneak in one more question. I think Mace has an excellent question too, so I might just make that a last one before the next showcase. Mace, did you want to ask your question directly?
Sure, no worries. Thank you, Lisa. And also I want to link to that, what you're talking about, the learning analytics and the impact that we can observe and capture is actually a very hot topic and an interesting conversation that we are going to have tomorrow. So we'll share with you the rest of the program tomorrow. But my question is really about every time I look at open textbooks, my thinking goes straight to, okay, how can I use this in learning and teaching? You showed us, when I typed the question, you showed us straight the answer to my question, but do you want to add more to that? How can we use, as academics, how can academics adapt and adopt book in teaching?
Yeah, look, you can download this book in lots of formats, and but we find that the LTI is a bit clunky. If you can download this book in Common Cartridge LTI links, and you can then import it into, we use Canvas, that's our LMS. You bring it in, and you have to export the whole book, bring the whole book in, and then pick the bits that you want to, install as modules in your Canvas course. I find that a little clunky, and what we'd like to do is actually be able to say, someone could go to a page and go, hey, I want to grab that page and I just want an embed code and I want to put it in my curriculum resources. Just to show you, our Learning Lab website, if I go pick a page that's got content, any page here, we can just like a YouTube video, we can grab an embed code, we can hide the title or intro, we can grab that and directly put it wherever we want in Canvas or any other location. We've got instructions for academics for how to do that. We'd love to be able to do that with Pressbooks. You can actually just literally copy and paste chunks of content. It's not quite the same thing though as having a really easy embed code. But we are thinking all the time of ways to integrate, and I guess that's a bigger question for the library as, you know, the home of RMIT Open Press, you know, not just our book, but like all the books that we have, how we go about doing that. But yeah, it's a good question. It's one we're still trying to think of ways of, you know, ways of doing that and how it works. You could just link, but it's nice to, if you wanted to embed. And because it's open source, I mean, because it's Creative Commons licensed, you know, you can take parts, you can remix it. There's nothing to stop you from taking any or all of the book and doing whatever you want with it, really, as long as you attribute the content.
Yeah,
it's free to use.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I feel like these are good problems to have. Once you have that fantastic content and it's built on an open platform, now it's about, yeah, what happens afterwards in terms of tracking usage, looking at impact, and continuing to update that content as well. So thank you again, so for generously sharing and showing us the back end of your text. Apologies to those who've had to go early because I have one more fantastic showcase and I don't want to miss out for those who are still here. So I might just jump into our third one. Let's go back to my share screen. So last but not least, our third showcase today is legal research skills. And we have two fantastic authors from the larger contributing team here to present on that. We have Michelle Bendel from Deakin University. She's the Scholarly Services Librarian. Has over 30 years of experience as a law librarian working in Victorian court, academic, and specialized law libraries. We also have Kate Strong from Edith Cowan University. She is the Digital and Information Literacy Librarian, and she supports the School of Business and Law with scaffolding digital literacy skills across the curriculum. So I will stop sharing and hand it over to you two.
All right. Thanks, Helen, and hello, everyone. Let me just move this out of the way a bit. So we are talking today on behalf of all of the authors of this OER. I'm joining you from the lands of the Wurundjeri in Victoria, and Kate is joining us from the lands of the Noongar people in Perth, Western Australia. We respectfully acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, elders and peoples as the first peoples, educators and innovators in this country. Now, it's a pleasure to join everyone today and to share the story of a unique OER collaboration that brought together many law librarians from across all of the Australian states and territories. This Australian legal research skills textbook exemplifies many of the benefits that open educational resources offer. The resource not only reuses existing valuable content, but is a significant collaboration and iterative expansion of Creative Commons licensed materials. In Australia, legal textbooks are still largely available from commercial legal publishers. However, there is a wealth of primary legal materials such as cases and legislation freely available online via government and court websites and other free legal information websites. This project was intended to help law students discover and navigate legal research, which evolved into a success story that is now in its third year. Law librarians across Australia have worked collaboratively to address the gap in the Australian legal publishing ecosystem, generously combining and sharing their expertise and knowledge to benefit law students across Australia and beyond. So, where did it all begin? Well, during 2022, James Cook University Law Librarians were seeking to create a foundational ready reference tool for first-year law students. Having conducted an environmental scan, they realised that this was also needed by numerous other Australian universities. It made sense to collaborate and create a resource that would be useful for all. The resource needed to be openly licensed, institutional neutral and scalable. Colleagues at the University of Queensland had already developed a set of online legal research modules that were available under a Creative Commons licence. This provided a solid foundation for content. JCU law librarians were already familiar with the Pressbooks interface at their own institution, and through the CAUL Collective, so were able to mobilise the idea of converting these modules to a Pressbooks ebook very quickly. The UQU librarians were also enthusiastic, and the creation of Legal Research Skills in Australian Law Guide began. Some quick networking with colleagues at a number of other Australian universities, including myself, took it from a 1-university project to a 7-university project, and the first 2023 edition of the textbook was created. This resulted in 5 of the 9 Australian legal jurisdictions being represented. We started out with the first 2023 edition, which was very well received, and based on that success, we expanded the collaboration, incorporating additional contributions from law librarians and academics at the University of South Australia. They became the 8th university to be represented, and the 2024 edition was published in early January of 2024. But there were still 3 jurisdictions not covered in the book. So after further networking, we now have 11 universities collaborating from across all the Australian states and territories. The 2025 edition now includes Western Australia, Tasmania, and the ACT, meaning all Australian legal jurisdictions are covered. This is one of the key outcomes that we have been working towards over the last 3 years. So Ash, thanks for putting the link in the chat. There's also a link here and a QR code, but let's just have a quick look now. So one of the things that I really like is just the layout of the book, that it's very easy to go in to read the book, and the formats are very similar to other ebooks on the Open Educational Resources Collective. Coming into the contents, I really do want to acknowledge the contributors, the other authors to this ebook. And in particular, we have Alice joining us today. And of course, as you know, Ash is here today as well. So coming back up, just always good to see who the contributors are to a book. We have the accessibility statement and also a version history. I find with good OERs is that they're living resources, and certainly there's more work or more resources that we could add to this in the future. So having the one main volume now that we can update and just keep track through our version history. Coming back to the contents, we are divided into 5 parts here: general research skills, primary research skills searching for case law, and primary research skills searching for legislation. This is what's happened the most in the last edition, is that we now have legislation chapters from every Australian state and territory, and they are really good practical instructional chapters on how to find legislation. And then at the end of every chapter there will be a review quiz using H5P from within the Pressbooks platform. So that's just a quick look at that. Now, one more thing I just wanted to mention before I hand over to Kate: what is the benefit of working with Pressbooks and the CAUL OERs? In terms of how we collaborate, during production, all contributors met online regularly via Zoom, and this can get a bit tricky because we had to account for at least 5 different time zones. Between meetings, we found that Microsoft Teams was useful for quick conversations to ask questions, share feedback and mentoring, and we keep all of our working files stored in a SharePoint site. We still use Microsoft Teams today for all of us to get together and chat about legal research, or just helping with each other with other legal research types of resources. The team from the CAUL OER Collective have been amazing. The collective hosts the institutional neutral resource for us, and their support and collegiality has been instrumental in the successful development of this resource. Through the collective, we've been able to continue to build familiarity with the Pressbooks platform and publish these new editions. The ability the platform provides to reuse and adapt content, and the integral collaboration of law librarians at the very heart of this resource, led to the guide being a finalist in the 2024 OE Global Awards in the Open Reuse Remix Adaptation category. This also highlights the benefits of building open educational practice and mentoring additional authors and peer reviewers for this ongoing project. In 2024, we were contacted by New Zealand law librarians who could see the potential in this guide and have now started their own collaboration. We wish the New Zealand group all the best with their forthcoming publication. So, data. Kate, would you like to take us through what the data says about our textbook?
Thanks very much, Michelle. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So I joined the project in 2024 after offering to author the chapter about WA legislation, and that evolved into working on another chapter with Michelle about the generative AI use in legal research. So there's been a lot of changes recently to the platforms and websites used for legal research across Australia, and we were really able to easily incorporate those into the new guide using Pressbooks and bring that content right up to date. the collective strength of everyone's law librarian experience across those 9 diverse legal and geographic jurisdictions has really resulted in a practical, openly available resource that can benefit legal researchers in Australia, but also beyond. The data that we have been able to extract. So for the first 2 editions, it showed that the resources were really popular with users, primarily in Australia, of course, but the guides also being used internationally in Europe and Northern America, and particularly in New Zealand. In terms of impact, although the analytical data is limited, as Lisa's just mentioned, we're really pleased with the continued uptake of the guide. More information about who is actually using the guide and how they're using it would be really helpful, though. In 2024, there were 2,829 total visitors between January and December. So this is for the 2nd edition. The guide had 2,410 active users. So that means 85% of the total users were actively using the guide. And the pages about legal research skills and legal citation were the ones that were most accessed, followed by case law. With our new edition, which was published in January this year, the current statistics are showing strong usage for just the first 3 months of 2025. We've already achieved 87% of the 2024 total visitor numbers between the 1st of January and the 8th of April. And there have been 2,469 total visitors in that time. That figure's also already more than 66% of the total visitors for the 1st edition in 2023. So we can see how the usage is continuing to grow. Okay, Michelle, if you could hop into the data for me, that would be great.
Yes, sorry. Let me just
Thank you,
sign
that's
in.
okay. I won't dwell on this long because Lisa's done a really nice overview of the analytics section already. So this was just to highlight where we stand and the ease with which we could adjust that. Now that it is limited, but it has given us an indication of which pages are being used. And I have to highlight that that new chapter, which I'm going to come on to, is coming in strongly there. At number 3 in the usage of the pages. And we've also got an indication of where that traffic is coming from, although it's not in great detail, but we can see it's coming, I think, predominantly from the universities. Okay, thank you. I'll go back to the slides. Okay, so we've been asked to just bring or talk specifically to chapter 40, which is one of the newest chapters in the guide. This is our chapter which is addressing legal research using generative AI. It particularly focuses on legal research as opposed to the use of Gen AI more broadly in the legal sector, because obviously of the focus of the guide overall. So the use of Gen AI across the legal sector was going to be a far, far bigger topic and not really in the context that we were working on. But with Gen AI being such a prevalent topic currently, the project team felt there was an opportunity to tackle this head on in the knowledge that the Pressbooks platform would allow us to easily update the content as things evolved. So we collaborated across the jurisdictions and researched what was happening in legal practice at the moment, but also in the universities. And this resulted in us incorporating a collation of the current Australian court practice directives. We reviewed how Gen AI is being used effectively in the legal profession, but specifically in relation to legal research, because of those other areas that fall outside the scope of the guide. Looking at the key themes that were emerging relating to its ethical use and expectations from the profession about responsible practice. We also reviewed Gen AI use in university legal education and some of the guidance that is being provided to law students at university around their own skills development, responsible use, and understanding what's happening in industry. In that process, we did identify some bad practice as well. So some of the challenges with Gen AI use and how misuse is occurring. We've all come across the articles that have been in the news about lawyers citing cases that don't exist in court, those sorts of things. So we wanted to align the advice towards responsible use, hopefully raising awareness of some of those issues and ways to go about avoiding getting caught in that problem. And then looking at Gen AI practice, we identified some examples of current Gen AI tools that are focused on the Australian jurisdictions and intended for legal research, thinking that these may be more accurate in their outputs and perhaps more helpful with Australian legal research. With those, we added a big caveat across the top to say that information was was current as of the end of last year, so up to December 2024, but also that we were in no way endorsing the validity of any of those tools, especially as things are changing so rapidly. So with such rapid change around Gen AI, the Pressbooks platform actually suited our purposes perfectly because we can update that content and record minor version changes as necessary before we need to substantially create a new edition of the guide. So Michelle, if you could hop into the chapter there. So this is the additional chapter that was added. You can see those notes nice and clear, in part because, of course, Gen AI is not the best route to go when you're doing legal research, but we did need to acknowledge that it is out there and it is being used, and encourage students to use that in a more effective manner. So that's the guide. There's some of the tools, which actually has already changed in the last 3 months, perhaps slightly, and just some of the risks and benefits to flag those, especially around legal research and obligations to client professional practice, those sorts of issues. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle and Kate. Wonderful piece of work. And like I said, I'm excited. I see it. There's a bit of a gap in that space with these kind of open textbooks as well. And having that NAI chapter, I can already envision some of our law academics here at UTS wanting to incorporate that into their subject. So I'll certainly do some plugging of that in our own networks. So just wanted to now make time for some questions, and this is now also questions for any of our panelists or specifically for this last book, and just want to make space for anyone who has any burning questions. So feel free to put it to chat or unmute yourself and ask away. While people are thinking, I do have my own request for Kate and Michelle. I know that UTS often a big question for consultations is using like AGLC, which all students hate. It seems with a passion, and using it with like EndNote, for example, or Mendeley and other tools. So I don't know if that was ever a part of the scoping of content that might ever be included, or is that outside of what you really want to touch on, given it's a sort of commercially based tools? Or
No, that's quite okay. I might have moved too quickly. Under part 1, under research skills, chapters 5 and 6 and 7 are about using the Australian Guide to Legal Citation, including some review. Yep.
Okay. With EndNote or like Zotero, like using it.
I don't believe, Alice, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we actually have EndNote and Zotero within it. I know from personal experience with the Deakin Library Resource Guides is that we promote the UTS style guide for EndNote, but I don't think that's actually in this part of the ebook.
Yeah,
because there's so many others out there now. There's so many resources that students use. So I think what we stick to is the actual main legal research skills.
That makes sense.
I mean, it's same with any of the free and open, we don't really promote one type of free legal website against another. We just give the general skill of primary sources and secondary sources.
You're like the ABC, right? You can't I'm doing a plug here now for Clarivate. That's probably a bad idea. They don't need the plug.
No,
but that's fine.
Yeah, they do own some of the legal databases, so they could.
They do, don't they?
I
see Mark has raised his hand. Mark, what's your question?
Thank you. This is just a general question for anyone really. With the I wasn't familiar with this platform, but I'm clicking around and it looks really impressive. And, you know, there's lots of, well, not just potential, we have evidence that you've actually used it and put things up there. So I'm just wondering about like taking 10 giant steps backwards. How do you manage the scope of your project or projects? Or, you know, like it seems like even so it's manageable and achievable with such a huge potential to kind of publish things in terms of the interactives and the formats and the versions and the content. Just wondering, maybe if you got any tips for someone that's wanting to venture into this territory, how did you manage the kind of scope of what you are aiming to achieve before it maybe in your early stages?
If I can just mention something, the CAUL Open Educational Resources Collective Publishing Workflow has some really good guidelines and steps to go through. One of the things that I think Ash shared with us was like an Excel sheet where you could step everything out. So Ash, I think you'd be better to answer this, but I just want to really promote that great resource guide that CAUL has on the process.
Oh, yeah. That's in the chat. I guess I was thinking more about the emotional state rather than the steps involved. It's more like, is it too kind of overwhelming up front for the project team, or it's like, no, we can do this. And you kind of, because it seems like it's coming together magnificently, all these books and resources. But I just thinking about the practicalities of getting everyone on board. But I will take a look at the workflow.
I think that might be why a lot of our authors
So
never contributed.
Sorry, maybe I've confused my question.
Kat,
No.
did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just think that maybe that might be the reason a lot of our authors didn't contribute. It was such a big scope, and they weren't quite sure where it fit into it. So it was really much encouraging them that this is somewhere where their work fitted in, and it didn't have to be in a particular slot. It's very broad ranging. Yeah.
And it was messy, you know. I mean, all the flowcharts and spreadsheets in the world, and as good as they are, it still gets messy when you've got all the other demands on your time, and you're not quite sure where this fits, and somebody's asking you to do something, and you've forgotten what it was about. So yeah, I think it's like any publishing project that it has those problems. I just think the outcomes, you know, on the sites that we've seen, kind of make it worthwhile. And it's, you know, if you were thinking of doing it, I'd go and have a look at some of the books and sort of just so people have got a clearer end point in mind. I think Kat had a really clear idea of what she wanted. The rest of us fell into line and eventually caught up with her. And I think that's often what happens.
I think that last statement just clarified for me. That was really what I was asking. And I guess that just as if I could sneak in a second little question, are these what we're looking at? Are they the end point, or do people always try and like have them as an active live document, or that's not a really good idea? We just sign them off, and we've achieved this aim.
It was an endpoint to getting out a publication, but in it, the first thing I say is we want more contributions. We want more people. Once you've seen that the sort of material is out there, can you add anything? So, yeah.
But what happens then? What happens then if there's, wouldn't it make another version? Like,
yes,
okay.
And it's the versions are annotated. So, yeah.
Okay, that's another, that last statement's clarified.
Same sort of boat, really, because with the legal research guide, that has taken 3 years to pull everybody together. So it was a sort of relatively slow process, and just through connecting and collaborating and people putting up their hands, I guess we've managed to pull the 11 universities together to have coverage across all of the states and territories. But with this last edition that we've got now, the intention is that it's live to a certain extent, I guess. So if we've got minor updates and changes that need making, that's going to be encompassed within the versioning. If it gets to the point that we have more substantial changes, that's when we're going to talk about a new edition, potentially.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Lisa, did you want to add anything in terms of, because again, with your book, there's a lot to cover. How do you decide on the scope of content, and where do you stop? Like, at what point you go, like, it's done?
It's very hard to stop, actually. And we sort of have a process of storyboarding things before we actually go into production of them. But having said that, there's a point where the storyboard just ends and you start developing, and then you do end up with slightly different things or more things than you originally thought. But we will have other versions. As I said, there's a couple of updates I want to make this year, which are not enough for a completely new edition, but they will be a version of the book. But my team's quite small, and I was pretty much the author of the content, but I pulled in resources from lots of places, so I didn't have to deal with a lot of stakeholders and contributors, I guess, which made it probably much faster to author. Also, because I taught a lot of this stuff myself in the past, I had a lot of my own content to draw from. But there are new developments coming all the time. One of the things I want to add to a new version is some new CSS color spaces for web development, which when I started authoring the book, they weren't really used and available. And so if you're including something about technology or something in a field that's rapidly changing and you want to keep it up to date, I think that's part of the commitment, as well as checking for broken links. It's like ensuring that if you want to keep it going, that you do keep the information current and up to date. And as much as we try to, have no typos or no errors, there may be one or two. And if people notice that and get in touch with us, I mean, that's happened twice in 2 years, I guess, just very small things that we were like, oh, missed that one. We were able to update that really quickly. You can do that. You just go in and edit it and fix that problem. And so it's something that we have to commit to manage over time, as we do all our learning resources in the library.
Thank you for that. Earlier in the chat, we also had a great question from Trudy. She was asking about, talk about the review process prior to publishing. How does it compare in your experience with other academic literature?
CAUL provides a review sheet, sort of guidelines to do the process. Again, you've got guidelines for everything. It's great. And perhaps for ours, it was difficult because the topic is engineering or Indigenous knowledge or education sort of combined. And so we had most of the education reviewers just to see, do they think this would be a way of learning those sort of concepts? And so it was reviewed firstly just few chapters at a time, and then like basically the whole book, except the larger chapters were redone as a piece. So yeah.
Anyone else want to jump in to talk about their peer review process as well, or other review processes as a part of publishing?
I would say that one of our press books that not my team hasn't produced, but our learning, teaching and research unit has produced is actually how to author the press book. It's got all the advice in it. So it's a press book about making a press book in effect. And it has got some really good information about peer review and all, different steps you go to, probably similar to the CAUL one, actually in certain ways. But that's a great help to any of us wanting to, make a press book. We've got that resource to draw on to help us as well.
Kate and Michelle, did you just follow the CAUL workflow, or did you add anything additional as a part of that review process?
I suspect we did. Sorry, it sounds dreadful, but I joined the project a bit late, and I know that when I wrote my chapter on Victorian legislation that someone peer reviewed it. So Alice, who's with us today, who I think was mostly our project manager for the ebook, or maybe Ash. And with our last chapter, I think we just shared it amongst the authors to peer review, which was really good. So I think that's my memory. I think the authors collaborated on peer reviewing. And if I didn't get that right, Alice, please let us know. Hello, Alice. Nice to see you.
Yeah. No, thanks so much, Michelle. No, you're absolutely right. And we very much considered it a like an internal peer review process, because we were sort of all legal experts in our jurisdictions and helping our students understand legal research skills. So we had a lovely internal peer review process. Worked really well. Thank you.
One thing just to add on, so I can only speak here for my WA legislation chapter, but I worked with the law team at ECU and asked a couple of them to have a read through it and give feedback. So that was just to get some of their input as they were going to be hopefully the ones using it.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. I know it's when I talk to academics who are sort of new to the open education space, that's usually one of the first things they kind of ask is like, is it as robust? Is it scholarly? What review process? There's sort of a skepticism. And when once you actually explain, like, look at this workflow, how much work goes into it, how quickly things are fixed, you may not get the same kind of level of review, in fact, with like a commercial text, not to name anyone out there that may do that. So I've been actually impressed because it's all transparent. It's like, this is a process we did. Here's the versioning of the content as well. So yeah, it's peer-reviewed, robust, scholarly, and definitely suitable for student use. And just going back quickly to the previous question, people asking about scope, you know, one of the great approaches that I've seen here at UTS is where an academic starts from the subject. It's like, here's my first year subject. Here are my learning outcomes. This is then therefore the content that I actually require. So kind of going backwards from that approach to actually creating the content worked really well. And they basically tell their students now, you know, each week, here's the readings that are actually attached to that learning outcome. And it kind of then drives the scope and the content shaping for that as well. Now, I realize we've gone vastly over time in terms of I had these grand ambitions to show you Pressbooks, but then I thought Lisa's kind of done the hard work for me, so there really is no need. But what I might do is I'll email anyone registered today, because there's some really great short videos from Pressbooks themselves. Anyone else any good recommendations, chuck them into the chat to kind of just walk you through it. It is very simple. It is kind of like using WordPress. There's a lovely WYSIWYG editor. You can add media, video, links, glossary terms. It is like literally, you can, if you had an existing Word document or another file, you create an open textbook probably like in an hour or less. It would need a lot of finessing afterwards, but like literally I've had some chapters take that or less time in terms of actually getting the mechanics of it into the platform. So on the note, just wanted to say again, if you had registered for today's session, Ash has been fantastic. She's actually given everyone access into the back end of Pressbooks itself. You will see when you go into it, a lovely sounding text called the CAUL Strategic Project. So this is a bit of our sandpit, and it's going to last till the end of tomorrow. So feel free to go in, add something, create it. You're not going to break it all. We're just going to shove it back out afterwards and make it pristine again. So please make use of that. It's a great way to play with the tool. Again, not to say you have to use Pressbooks, but it's just if you haven't done it before, it gives you a flavor of how it works. You can see how easy it is. Academics and authors seem to really love that control that they have, the look, the feel, the navigation, the content. It's all, you know, they're in the driving seat of putting that forward into the best publication that they would like to see for students and readers after that. So I just want to thank everyone again so generously for their time and sharing. I always learn new things when I talk to the open education community. Big thank you to Ash, big thank you to the panel, big thank you to Mace and her team. Tomorrow, please come back again. We've got a really fantastic session around, so once you publish, now how do you get that recognized and perhaps go for academic promotion as well and get that broader recognition for yourself. So thank you again to everyone, and have a lovely afternoon. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Helen. See you later, everyone.